All right, we are recording. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Patrick Fiore. I'm the facilitator of this group of 6 representatives. And I would like to start off, let me share my screen with a little agenda summary. All righty. So here's a little summary of our agenda today, and I'm going to try to help keep everybody on track of time so that we don't go over. We are going to begin with some introductions of ourselves, what our roles are. We're going to use our real names, but we're going to try to stay in our roles as best as possible. And some of the ground rules are going to be to keep an open mind, and it's difficult on Zoom, but we'll try not to interrupt. I'm not sure if anyone has a delay on their Zoom internet. I know some slow internets have that weird delay. But once you introduce yourself, also share what your primary interests and concerns are within your role. The purpose of the meeting is, I'm going to get into the next one, but it's basically to advise the city of Mapleton on what strategies to implement to best cope with the possible public health impacts of this climate change. And what better time than now as to discuss things that we need to do to address climate change with all this crazy weather going on. So I introduced myself already, Patrick. I am the facilitator. I will do my best at keeping everybody on track and keeping things focused and moving along. And to stop us from accidentally interrupting, we'll just call on people that I got listed. Is it Yafan?
Here. Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Yifan, and my role is the city manager. And my interest would be to find some cost-effective ways to reduce the excess morbidity and mortality related to this heat change. And I want to establish the cross-sector collaboration. And also I want to avoid disruption of the city services, and I don't want to be blamed for mismanagement. That's all my interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. Yeah, we definitely do not want to blame for anything. Next I got is Jamie Lee.
Hello, my name is Jamie Romero. I am the public health director. My main concern is the frequent waves of heat and the intense storms in Mapleton City, and also worry about how these cases will impact certain people, like the old people, young people, people with pre-existing conditions, people that doesn't have transportation, and all that.
Righty, thank you. Next, I got Johanna.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Johanna Blaze. I am the Lone Range Planner of Mapleton University. And the primary concern is about the health and safety of the university students, the faculty, and the staff. And we just want to have to be the leader in addressing the climate change generally, and we're just striving to be good neighbors. So thank you.
Brianne, can you hear us? Oh, there you go.
I heard like it was very, very quiet, so I didn't hear my name. Sorry about that. So I'm Brianne Chanuki. I'm the president of the Mapleton Chamber of Commerce, and as being part of the Chamber of Commerce, I represent the interests of business owners in Mapleton and want to maintain the economic validity of the city. I also want to ensure that the long-term climate adaptation decisions do not undercut the city's economy or conflict with the immediate needs of the business or real estate owners.
And next I got Colette.
Hello, everyone. I'm the executive director for Neighbors for Green Mapleton. I'm specifically concerned about the impacts of greenhouse gas emissions on climate change and the energy and consumption related to that and how it impacts our residents, both current residents and future residents. Really want to make sure to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and preserve open space and green space for our residents.
Thank you, Colette. And last but not least, Teslin.
Hi, so my name is Teslin and I'm the Director of Public Housing. My goals for this meeting is to advocate for marginalized residents who will be affected the most by climate change. I really want the city to focus on the most vulnerable by supporting the low income and public housing residents. So that's kind of my goal.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everybody. Sounds like we have a very diverse group of people here representing all different types of interests and backgrounds. So next on the agenda is talking a little bit about our meeting purposes and our strategies for getting this accomplished. It is the City Council of Mapleton that has asked for this advisory group to come together and basically provide some suggestions or recommendations from our expertise, come up with some consensus and some compromises possibly. You know, not everyone is going to be able to get probably exactly what they want. There's maybe some conflicting interests. We may have to give and take a little bit. But this recommendation will be given to the City Council and they will make the ultimate final decision as to what they're going to choose to do. So what the City Council is asking for is a decision in which at least 5 out of the 6 of you or all can agree on. It would be nice to get a unanimous consensus on 6 of 6, but if we can get 5 out of the 6 of everybody to come to a final agreement on a decision to provide to the council for recommendation, that'd be excellent. And so in addition to these pre-made, this list of strategies that every single one of you has your own unique strategy, you can think kind of outside of the box and some other creative solutions as well. So you're not necessarily locked in completely to that. The 5 strategies I will just briefly share with you are strategy A is information-based, and that is considered a low expense. Strategy B is an emergency preparedness focus, and that is a medium expense. And strategy C is a resource allocation type, and that is considered a high expense. Strategy D is rules and regulations, which is considered a low expense. And strategy E is prevention, and that is considered a high expense. I have a little dry erase board behind me, and I'm going to keep track of some of our pros and cons to each one of these as we go through them. And I believe we are just about ready, pardon me, for our discussion here soon. All right, I'm looking good on that. So next up, we were going to spend approximately 20 minutes, 20 to 25 or so minutes discussing these issues that we need to come up with in order to really mitigate this climate catastrophe that's coming. In this discussion, the purpose is really to just brainstorm and explore possibilities before we actually come to an agreement. So in this next 20-25 minutes, we're not going to actually come up with a final agreement or anything like that. We're just going to be kind of throwing out some good ideas, kind of brainstorming. You're going to focus on your own individual interests, whatever it is that, you know, the business or the agency that you represent. It would be encouraged you guys to respond to each other. You know, it's not just one person talks about what they want and then vice versa, you know, goes all the way down the line. So little discussion amongst yourselves. we're not just going to make a final decision or agree on anything yet. We're just going to try to get our different views out in the open and know what we're going to be working with. Make sure I'll try to keep track of this time, make sure that we're on time. I don't want to cut us too short. I want everyone to have enough time to explain their own personal interests. And we can add or amend any types of options later on to make it more acceptable. So with that, are there any other questions before we start discussing some of our issues? Would we like to just, I think it'd be a little more time consuming if we all did hands on the raising hands, but if you wanted to, you can do that. But I say just kind of popcorn style for everyone to kind of just jump in. And I'll keep track of the chat as well in case anyone types anything in there. So with that, discuss.
Well, I can start by saying that the city should provide full funding for activities that support capacity, like capacity building, green growth, and absorptive capacity. The funds can be used to provide insurance for people that cannot cover their own expenses, medical expenses, enable them to access healthcare. I don't know what you guys think about this.
Hi, Jamily. So as the city manager, I'm wondering, like, are the methods you proposed, like, they belong to the prevention? So you mean want to increase the facilities and to prevent heat stroke and other things, like to protect the residents who are homeless or like very aged and something like that?
Yeah, I was talking like about the strategy number, I think it's number C, about funding
Oh,
allocation.
see, okay.
Yeah, about having some funding to cover and create some activities, and through these activities we can get some funding and cover like health insurance for people that cannot cover their own expensive medical bills.
Okay.
Resource
I
allocation, is
see.
that what you're referring to, Jamily?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Well, with that, the concern that I have, it would be costly to the city, and it might not lead to entanglement with the public health improvement. So that's what my concern is, just mainly because it's going to be a lot. I don't know if anybody agrees.
Yeah. I agree with Johanna, because we need to allocate another budget for this. It will be really hard for us to do, and we really have to keep the budget down. Otherwise, we will have to increase the tax, which is really hard.
I would argue in the long term that kind of allocating resources towards this infrastructure and kind of facility management would save costs in the long term. Just because if we're able to protect our residents and have these kind of resources available to them, there's a lot of costs that can be minimized in the future because of that.
I can see. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Oh, I was going to say, yeah, I can see the facility coordinating between various city agencies and to implement the policies that prevent climate related illness, which will provide the wide scale health benefits. So, and then it would also create a long-term strategy for the city to manage the public health issues to climate. So I would be willing to accept, but it wouldn't be my first choice. So
I would agree on it not being necessarily my first choice. I think it would be a costly expense and that it would translate into increasing taxes for our local business owners. And since I do represent them, I think that is an important role to take. And I think Mapleton's already an expensive area. So I think that a lot of the business owners would really struggle and not be able to stay afloat if they had increased taxes or increased expenses. And then I would be willing to accept it if the strategy, if the city was able to ensure that the businesses wouldn't struggle financially or be burdened financially.
I personally agree with Colette. I think that in order for public housing authorities to feel confident in some sort of climate crisis, they need training. And so it's really important that we have some sort of training, at least in the low income or marginalized communities, to make sure that we're preparing all of our residents, not just like the higher income ones or business owners.
Thank you. So it sounds like so far with Jamie's idea on resource allocation that it's very expensive. It could be increased tax. However, it is a high investment which will eventually pay off long term. Providing more economics later on. So, what are some other suggestions for the other types of strategies? And just remind me a little bit too as to which strategy it is that you focus on.
I would go with emergency preparedness. And it's just because that many direct health benefits, like if a flood or because of the climate change, the flooding and the heat events that we've been experiencing or could potentially be experiencing, especially for the university staff and students, and they're living off campus. And then also the university's medical center has limited capacity, and in a serious emergency on the university, it would just mainly rely on Mapleton's other hospitals. So I'm kind of pushing for the emergency preparedness strategy B.
I think in terms of sustainability, I would disagree that emergency preparedness would be kind of a top priority. I think just off of past experiences as the flooding in Mapleton, we handled it pretty well. I think in order to be a little bit more sustainable, we should allocate our resources towards more prevention and kind of decreasing our impact on climate change specifically.
I think it would help with the mortality rate. I don't know if I was talking about it, but it will help reduce like the emergency response time and the number of deaths. And it could also help the first responders too with identifying health-related risk or respond effectively. And then with the training residents, to assist, they could actually like assist with their neighbors and communicate urgent medical needs to the first responder, ensuring that those are the greatest they're going to be the first to help. So that's what I think the benefits, the public health benefit side of it.
I want to add that to Joanna about the emergency preparedness. I think it's really important because right now we are, I know there are lots of long-term goals, but if we are capable of doing something like to solve the short-term goals, that would be great. So I hope that we can make some preparedness to help people to identify heat strokes and other illness related to heat waves, and so that people can respond better in such situations. And since we have limited medical resources, I think this is really important. We don't want to run out of resource in the end. So that's my opinion.
So I think that the population that is most at risk, like the old people, young people, or people with conditions already, will not benefit from this strategy because we will know that they probably will not undertake that training for do this. It's people that most of them cannot like be training to do this kind of thing. So that's what I think.
If I can kind of summarize, make sure I'm hearing this all correctly. With in terms of emergency preparedness and response, sounds like some of the cons of this is that it's really only a short-term fix. It kind of fixes the symptoms, the reactions, responses from such an event, and not the actual preventing the issues from happening in the first place. But some pros are is that the city does not have quite enough resources as is, and we would need more people to respond during and after these climate instances or incidents to help save lives. And it would also just reduce the response time, as we can see what is going on in Florida and other places. Do I have that correct? Johanna, I think that was your.
Yeah, but then also like it kind of will prepare people for like activities like to know what they're going to do if something were to happen, such as like they know how to do evacuation drills and clarify medical response teams responsibilities, and also adding emergency responder training for current public health staff, which could also, like Jamie was saying about the senior citizen, what they would be able to help them. And then it would just be, I think it would just be helpful to have them have with the neighbor or like have extra training to prepare for anything that comes along in the long term, not just the short term, so they would know what to do if during the climate related emergencies.
I think as a person that is trying to protect the needs of the general public, I think that it's really important that we really protect the public, the needs of public health. And in doing that, we want to do primary prevention instead of tertiary prevention to be able to approach climate change. So I think it's really a nice thing to be able to focus on the emergency preparedness of things, but I think in actually preventing climate change, we wouldn't actually even need emergency preparedness. So I think focusing more on that primary prevention, I think, is where we're going to want to focus, because we're only able to have two, I believe, two things that we're allowed to walk away from with two strategies. Sorry.
So I am personally for this strategy because it will really help the public housing citizens. We need staff and volunteers during these emergencies. And the only reason why I'm going more with like a response than a preventative measure is like, we already know that climate change is happening. Like there's nothing at this point that we can really do to do long-term prevention of it. So because we know what's happening, we need to be prepared when these actual like this crisis happens in Mapleton with these floods or whatever is going on. So that's why I'm more focused on how we need to be prepared to respond to the emergencies.
Tesla, yes, I do agree. And Rhian, yes, I do agree too that prevention strategy E would be also a great fit, just because it'll help promote long-term improvements in sustainability and limit greenhouse gas emissions. So I would agree with the strategy E for prevention too as well.
I would say if prevention costs so much. That's not going to be my priority because, as you know, we have a limited budget from the government. And but if we think out of the box, if we have some other things, I guess I would for it. But I think personally, I think rules and regulations will be better, which corresponds to strategy D. And so maybe we can just changes some of the building codes and also making some zoning laws so that in the future it's sort of preventive. Yeah, that's what I think about this matter.
I do agree with the kind of going with the strategies of rules and regulations as well. I think it's really important that we have guidelines for the public to, I guess, direct behavior and kind of our day-to-day functioning in order to decrease the impact on climate change. I think if it does work hand in hand with prevention, we would be able to maybe completely redirect how our city is kind of heading towards the increased amount of storms and etc. So I would say I feel rules and regulations plus prevention would give us a really good solid foundation for the future.
And that's a great suggestion there, Colette, as to not individualizing, possibly your defenses and your proposals to your own agency, but also ways that other ones can kind of come together and help each other's benefit. Sorry, I keep trying to fix my lighting. I can never get it right on these computer cameras. So if I hear this correctly, we've heard some from the emergency preparedness with Johanna, resource allocation from Shamali, rules and regulations of Yvonne, and prevention with Colette, and then the information based. Did I miss one of these, or?
We didn't talk about information based strategy.
Right. And that would be Teslin, I believe. And we can keep talking on rules and regulation if you want. I don't have a whole lot of specific pros and cons yet.
I think Brianne also mentioned prevention, if I'm correct.
You are. I would like to mention on rules and regulations, being someone who represents our citizens, I definitely would oppose this strategy. I'm definitely concerned about the burden that additional rules and regulations would impose on businesses, and some of the owners of these businesses would most likely move away to places that have fewer regulations. And so as someone who represents the city, I definitely want to make sure that we're committed to keeping Mapleton a highly rated place for businesses to locate and for our citizens to continue to live.
Yeah, I guess that we can, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. It's okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so I guess it all depends on what kind of regulations we are making. So from some of the regulations, we can make it to benefit all of us or most of us. And so I think in order to to have a sense like what kind of rules and regulations are great, we need to be more specific, like what rules are we talking about? Do we need to get to the details, or we just vote for the strategies? Shall we come up with a real plan, like what kind of rules and regulations we are talking about?
Yeah, we can propose some specific details as to how you expect to get some of those done.
Okay.
We do only have a few minutes left, but we can go over a little time, kind of a range.
I just wanted to add on for the rules and regulation one. Public housing is okay with it. Just because it's going to create like an equal playing field for everyone. The only thing that could possibly go into like how we would adapt the rules and regulation strategy is that I don't think that the public housing authority should have any extra fees or like anything like that, because we already struggle to keep the units up to code with our funding as is. So I feel like the public housing should be exempt from fees and charges.
Okay, that sounds reasonable.
Yeah, I think regulations increase financial strain, and we all know that people from Mapleton already have a hard time for cover their medical costs, so we have to consider that too.
Hmm.
Can I possibly maybe get some more examples of some information-based strategies? Would that be simply like educating the public as to what they can do to reduce climate change, or would it be educating the public or anyone else as to how they can respond when something bad happens or something else?
From my standpoint, I think information-based public awareness campaigns and et cetera wouldn't be that beneficial. I think it's extremely hard to change specific behaviors from the public just because of a couple of campaigns. I think resources would be better allocated towards things like rules and regulations and prevention strategies that we can assist the public instead of trying to get the general public to change behaviors.
I agree with Colette.
Uh,
Oh, go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry. You can go first this time.
Okay, I'll be short. I agree with Colette. I don't think that having like education, like posters or things around the city is really gonna do any good, because it is really hard to change behaviors and we only have so much funding to deal with this crisis. And I just don't think that would be the best use of our funds. And also a lot of like low income residents right now have nowhere to go and no way to like help fortify their homes or do anything like that. So, and I think everyone knows that there's a climate crisis happening with the recent floods. So I don't think that education is going to do a lot. I think we need to, as much as I want to focus on the preventative things, I think we have to really focus on like what's going to happen if tomorrow we have another like flooding or climate crisis incident.
Yeah, I agree with Kathleen and Colette because I think it's not really effective. Just you know how many drills you participated, but when real situation happens, I don't think it's gonna work that well. So as Kathleen said, I agree to put our resources to better to other places, so that it can be better used. Yeah.
And I think we should focus in helping people from all classes. And I think information will just help people from specific sectors, like the middle and high income.
I think as someone who personally has a son that has asthma and has health issues, I think having access to information like air quality data would actually be very helpful for my family to be able to manage his health more. And not just my family, but other families would benefit from this also. I think people can make smarter decisions if they're better informed about climate-related risks and are provided ways to respond to those risks. I think that it allows people to act independently while also lowering their overall risk.
I can see where you're coming from. The only thing I'm wondering is like for education, like or information based like approach, how do we know like what sort of educational tools are we going to be using? Because if it was something like air quality, like looking at my iPhone right now, I could see the air quality of like the area that I'm in. But So I'm kind of wondering, are we doing more on like how to prepare our citizens for climate crisis or climate crisis, like, or how to prevent climate crisis? Or are we doing things like air quality and like weather pattern changes, or like the quality or the level of like a flood happening today?
Yeah, I think going on my stance of other things, I think it's more of that preventative of the climate, the things that are going to impact the climate eventually. So focusing on the here and now and letting those things affect our decisions for the future. I think getting the air quality measures, getting all the information out there about different things that do affect the climate, I think are really important for people because they don't necessarily know where to look for those things, or what kind of data to be able to look up, and what reliable data to be able to look up to be able to make their own decisions on those things.
So if I can just chime in, as we're kind of running out of time here for this particular part, in regards to some information based on education, would that tie in whatsoever with strategy B in rules and regulations? If some of these rules and regulations are needed to be voted on, if I'm not sure if they need to be voted on during an election, that information base can also help inform voters to go with certain recommendations that are made to change laws. Does that sound about right? So I think Yvonne, you were rules. You focused a lot on rules and regulations. Are those things that you would do, by that the city would do, regardless of people wanting that to happen or not, or would that be more open to a vote?
So basically when we make up rules, we don't want that to be too strict so that people are like new industries will go away from our city. So I guess we will start from easy rules to help prevent future green gas emissions. So like and also I think it would be great if we can encourage like clean energies to come into our city, like solar energies or wind energies. This is not from the script, but I think it would be great if we can have such plants in our city, so that we can sort of prevent emitting so much gas into the air. Yeah.
All right.
So yeah.
Oh, sorry. So just in the interest of time, if some things that you just kind of didn't get to express, or you think about later, you can always bring it up. We're going to move on to shaping an agreement within ourselves. So it sounds like there's a lot of pros and a lot of cons to these 5 different strategies. As was already brought up, that some of these strategies can kind of come together and integrate and use each other. We're going to call that sort of like a package, so that you could put together, something like strategy A with strategy D, and kind of help and empower each other. Whether you put like a high expense and a low expense together, just kind of help break that down and bring it together. And so we are going to come up with an actual agreement. We're going to draft a summary of some recommendations for the city council, and then create a final package that is acceptable to most, or hopefully all of you all, and that you can also modify specific strategies or add conditions or contingent terms as we go, or shortly later. So try to consider the full entire package, what everything will entail, and some specific details, a possible potential cost to it. Be a little creative, and if you get stuck on something and you don't you can't really, you can come up with a little kind of an answer or a problem fix basically on your own. So if you want something to move forward or come together, you can kind of just explain how it could actually end up working. For example, education would make voters, more educated, and therefore they would vote so and so for your thing. So we're gonna have 20 to 25 minutes on this as well. So does anyone have any questions exactly on shaping our agreement? All right.
Do you think it would be great if we can go like strategy by strategy so that we can keep the same order?
Yeah, if that was for me, yeah. Just you're gonna choose the best strategy. You can choose just one if you want, but there may be more benefit to selecting a couple and coming up with a compromise that each one can kind of give and take a little bit of their own in order to make a couple of them work together.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So like, emergency preparedness and information base could kind of go together. There's a lot of education and public campaigning out there, getting people, first responders trained, that type of thing. Prevention can go with a few others, such as resource allocation, putting your investments towards long-term fixes, whether it be levees to help, block water from coming in from the ocean, that type of thing. Putting more trees in your park so that there's more shade for when it gets too hot. That kind of stuff.
Okay. All right. So all these strategies are nice. They have, like you said, Patrick, they have pros and cons. But the two main strategies that I'm more leaning on to is strategy B, which is the emergency preparedness, and emergency E, which is prevention. Just I like the two combination where they go hand in hand, both long term and like with the prevention, like you said, you could do the water with the flooding, and then also supporting on the green infrastructure, like the rooftop gardens on all public buildings, and adopting cool design improvements to, and then adapt, or yeah, public health cool design buildings and adapting cool design improvements. I hope I didn't get you mixed up, and then to city-owned the buildings, which will encourage green infrastructures on private property too. And this will also reduce heat levels and within or around buildings, and limiting heat stroke and dehydration, especially on Mapleton's University for the staff and students.
I agree with you that I think prevention should be a core part of our strategy, just because it's sustainable long term, and it'll both help with irregular weather patterns, and decrease kind of mortality and morbidity in all of our residents. I do think we should kind of consider the high expense on that. With a medium expense, I think the emergency preparedness, it will cost quite a sufficient amount of resources and money. And that, along with the prevention, I think it would be a little bit burdensome on the city. Maybe pairing it with a low expense like rules and regulation could help supplement the prevention, while still allowing us to stay reasonable within our resources.
Okay, I support emergency strategy as the main strategy, but I also believe that training members of the public alone could not help during emergencies if the relevant agencies lack the necessary resources to achieve like a faster response.
think I would be willing to go with Johanna's idea of doing prevention and having an emergency preparedness also. Because I think my strong strategy is prevention. I think it's really important that as an environmentalist myself, I think that supporting the improvement of health and climate impacts in the future, this is a great way to do that. Providing prevention with supporting green infrastructure and projects and enhancing the air quality and improvement of stormwater management is really important. And then being able to pair that with something like emergency preparedness of things that we need to address after the fact when we do experience climate change issues like flooding. So I think I would definitely prefer prevention, but I would be willing to accept emergency preparedness as also a secondary strategy.
I agree with that strategy as well. I like that we have both response and preventative measures taken. Both of these will help the public housing residents and also low income and marginalized residents. So I'm in favor of combining aspects of both of those.
I think most people voted like strategy B and strategy E. So one of them is emergency preparedness. That is a medium expense. And for the prevention, it's really high expense. So I guess we sort of all agree on the emergency preparedness, so that's a must do something. Yeah, so, but I like to talk about more details about the prevention strategy. So if we have to like change the building code into green infrastructure, like within a year, that's not really feasible. I would suggest that we can do it through rules and regulations. For example, if we want to build a new building, so perhaps we have regulations about that. So like in order to make new buildings in the city, you have to cover the top with some green infrastructure. Yeah, so I think that would balance the expense a little bit. And so far, I don't think we have enough money to support the prevention strategy. Yeah, what do you guys think?
I'm wondering if we could make legislation regarding kind of first responder, how many first responders are on a shift or things like that, in order to both tackle kind of that emergency preparedness while I guess still staying true to like I just lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry.
It's all right.
Yeah, well, I think what you're trying to get at is like we're trying to do is kind of combine a little bit of some of these to try to, because some of these prevention measures that you want to put into place, I'm not sure exactly what some specifics are, that would involve probably some rules and regulation changes, and an emergency response. So if you want something more long term to help prevent things in the future, and you kind of need things done right now in emergency response for when events happen. There can be other aspects put into that, like trainings for emergency responders, firemen, search and rescue, that type of a thing. If I'm getting that right, I'm supposed to be completely neutral. I am not favoring one or the other. I'm supposed to just kind of help put them together and stitch them together.
Thank you.
So it kind of sounds like we're like mostly, I think everyone's okay with strategy B. Is anyone not okay if we make like adaptations or we can change some things around to make it work for all of us? But is everyone like okay with strategy B?
Yep.
Yes.
I would say I would put a higher kind of importance on the prevention aspect, just because it's really important thing that I feel like we need to tackle. Maybe trying to gear our strategies within prevention to assist with emergency preparedness, but not necessarily focusing all of our resources onto emergency preparedness.
I think that's a good idea. We can we can focus on prevention, and I think we can bind them in a way that it makes it so it's equal efforts of both strategies. And then I know someone said rules and regulations, they wanted to add that in. I feel like there are some rules and regulations that can go into prevention and emergency preparedness. So I feel like combining all of those would work, I think, for everyone.
I'm kind of hesitant on the rules and regulations, so I'm opposed to it just because like the whole changing to building code, zoning laws. I'm just wondering what it would do for our students and staff, and there because our buildings are pretty old, so I don't know how that would work for them. So that's not my fave. So
So would you put some limitations then on it? So, possibly some of those rules and regulations to help some of the problems,
So
I think,
maybe
like
we
with
are
green spaces.
we are
but
not going to.
Go ahead. Yvonne.
I was just saying maybe we do not care about like the old buildings. We only put regulations on the new buildings.
I would also agree on being opposed to it just because we're putting rules and regulations on our citizens and on our businesses. So I do worry that some of the owners are again going to move away, or businesses are going to move out of our area because of those regulations that are implemented.
Yeah, right. Okay.
I think we can take in consideration prevention, but we have to remember that it's a high cost strategy. So, and we really have the money to do something like that. From where are we gonna get the sources to do something like that?
By having a safer town, more people are going to move there, and you'll have increased revenue.
I would agree on that. I think some of the ideas that we did put out there for prevention, I think will definitely raise our property values. And so I think there's going to be a lot more revenue coming into our area because of prevention measures.
Can I get some examples on some specific prevention measures? Like what exactly are we referring to? Is it long-term investments in like levies, that type of thing, or infrastructure of some sort?
Could be construction of dams, or like conservation of rivers or wetlands, some kind of projects like that.
Yeah, and I really support the green measures of infrastructure. So green spaces, stormwater management, air quality. I think that those are definitely things that can prevent climate change from impacting Mapleton significantly.
I agree with Brianne. I think also kind of maybe a specific infrastructure change for like a city center, our city center, we can maybe create, instead of those small roads that run through our main streets, we can change those into walking only, just shut off like driving through those main city centers. I don't think it's necessary that we have roads for vehicles there, just because people are already just walking from shop to shop. So that might be beneficial and decrease our greenhouse gas emissions too.
And I don't remember who mentioned it about the costs, where we're going to get the costs for these prevention measures, but I think a great strategy would really be implementing a series of public-private partnerships. So having not just one entity paying for it, but a combination. I think that our citizens could get on board that if the cities contributing just as much as private infrastructures.
Right. I guess I'm the one who mentioned about budgets, and because we really have to keep the budgets really low, otherwise we are going to raise our tax rates. I'm thinking maybe in terms of rules or regulations or prevention strategies, we have to be more specific. Like if we are going to change all the city-owned buildings to be green infrastructure in the first year, that would be really hard to do. And we need to reallocate our resources like budgets, and that would be very, very hard. So I think it would be better if we can like change the rules and regulations. So for example, I remember Claude said something about like limiting the people the gas emission in the center of the city, and so maybe we can encourage people to take buses. Yeah, what do you think about that? So that's sort of like strategy A, information based, or yeah, I think so.
I do agree. I think we need to have a high expense and maybe a low expense just because of we would have to increase taxes if we do go with maybe high expense, or high expense, medium expense. Because it seems like we are all kind of agreeing on this prevention strategy. I think it would be beneficial to maybe not impact the current business owners via rules and regulations from Brianne's concern, but maybe like the green infrastructure and things that we're wanting to implement in the future, we create regulations on air quality in those new buildings, or just kind of maintaining water contamination levels low and things like that.
Yeah.
Or we can make people like promote that people use, instead of gas cars, like electric cars. In that way we can reduce pollution, contamination.
Yeah, we can maybe, but so like maybe buying electric cars will will pay less tax. Maybe. I'm not really sure. What do you think about that?
Is that a compromise you're asking for everyone to consider, or?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, there's some blank faces.
Does that fall under rules?
Just because someone was shouting from above, I was like wondering what happened. It's not related to this conversation.
So are you suggesting that that falls under rules and regulations with the electric cars?
Yeah, we can definitely make rules and regulations to support greener usage of energies.
I mean, maybe we can not necessarily make a regulation or legislation on increasing the use of electric cars, but we could maybe have more electric charging stations put in around the city to encourage people to buy electric cars if they have that ability. I think maybe that could be an option.
Right. If we are making more electric stations, that means we need to sort of getting more facility. That means money. But maybe we can put that plan into future years. But I think cutting down the tax for electric cars would be easier to do. So that's what I'm thinking about.
One thing that I just wanted to mention is like, I'm personally like not, my director of public housing is not for prevention. We don't want it, but I think in the spirit of having a compromise that all of us will get at least one part of what we want, we have to like go outside of what our character directly wants and kind of think about how we can benefit everyone in the community.
Yeah.
And so like I said, I'm not for prevention, but I think I think it's expensive, but I do think it's a good use of our funds if we're having green infrastructure in all housing, including public housing. So that would benefit me, but it would also benefit in prevention methods for other people. So I think it would work for other people. And I think also it's important to realize that our budget is going, like, the bigger that our, or the more that we're spending, the more taxes, the higher taxes are going to get. So if we're spending a bunch of money on prevention, we're going to increase our taxes. That means business taxes are also going to be increased along with the general public. So we kind of have to think about, like, finances are really important, but I would also be willing to have higher budget if it's going to be the right solution and benefit everyone long term.
Yeah, I would agree with that. If it's going to improve our city and make it more of a great place to be able to house new companies and be able to have new people move in, I think that it's a great compromise to be able to have that increased budget.
All right.
I agree too.
It's been about an hour since we started, all the way from introductions on. So it's sounding like we're kind of beginning to really come together with some consensus and kind of a give and take for that everyone's at least a little happy. Sounds like a somewhat significant part of this amount of money that we'll put into it, or suggestion, is in prevention for long-term changes, which can include infrastructure, from increasing the storm drainage, flow, so that when it does flood, it can be, taken care of quicker. Something about the wetlands and the river, possibly levees. I'm not exactly sure with the description if there's an ocean nearby. I know we're in the Northeast. And also kind of paired with some rules and regulations that would possibly be put towards new buildings, like increasing the codes for new buildings, but not spending so much money on fixing up all of the old ones, because that could be a lot. Maybe every new building that's built, they got better windows, better insulation, better what have you. And then also a better, more attention to emergency preparedness and response, which could be increasing the numbers of actual responders, from fire to search and rescue to EMS, training people how to do their own types of preparedness, getting things ready to go if they get flooded out and they got to, these are just ideas. This is what I'm kind of thinking. I'm supposed to be keeping all my opinions out, so I'm just trying to put things that we could put into our final agreements, and to help pay for some of these more expenses, because we're kind of leaning towards the medium and high expense portions, is that we would increase the budget. I have not heard anything about increasing taxes so far. Sounds like everyone does not want to increase taxes, but we would ask for additional contributions from both public and private entities to help pay for certain things. Whether that be, I don't know, fundraising, whatever that could be with private, anything besides taxes. So that's kind of a summary of what I think I've been hearing. If someone wants to add something to it or change it a little bit, sounds like we're kind of thinking three types of strategies kind of combined, kind of four maybe even.
If I remember right, are we only allowed to choose two? I thought I read that somewhere.
I
but
think the
Mhm.
examples, yeah. Yeah, so it says to generate, yeah, two proposals.
Oh,
Two,
so
well,
not-
two in terms of packages, you know, so yeah, so like strategy A and D or C with F. Well, wait, there is no F. No, those are strategies. So more or less of like two different kind of areas. So two proposals that may be conflicting. I think we've already gotten through two to narrow it down to one. I don't believe what it's asking for is to actually pick only two strategies.
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, it's saying, I mean, we've already kind of done this where we come up with ideas. Some were kind of given up, someone's kind of let go of some of what they wanted. So I believe we kind of got it somewhat narrowed down to where everyone is kind of getting a little bit of what they want and what their goals are. If not, speak up. Does everyone who do they represent, from city managers to public health to you know, the chambers of commerce, all those different things? Is everyone pleased, or would you like to have more changes in your respective departments? All right.
I think I'm pleased.
We say aye. No, I agree.
I'm good. I
Alrighty.
just don't know how much tax rate I need to raise.
Yeah. Taxes will always go up. Well. All righty. So, sounds like we got a consensus. I believe that we have our commonalities to kind of put together. I think some of our most urgent ones that need to be happening now may be taken care of, such as emergency preparedness, and then also some medium and long-term strategies. What we're going to have to do now is finalize this agreement into something specific that we can write down and propose as a recommendation to the city council. So something that they can read, that we have put out there, where we feel that this is the best thing for this city to do in terms of all the pros and cons, from costs to actual effectiveness and change, and to make sure that everybody is happy. And we're gonna have to write this down. So, would you like me to write it down, or would somebody else want to scribe it? I can try to write it down since you all are doing that. So let me just make sure I get this right. If there are any changes, you can suggest one more time to change something in order to make this agreement more acceptable to everybody. Sounds like we're past that. And we're gonna write down the final agreement, summarize this agreement, or where we got stuck if there is no agreement, which I don't believe we were at. But speak up if you feel that we are, if you wanted something that you're not getting. And yeah, we got about 10 or so minutes to discuss this and getting it down. Does anybody have any outstanding needs for their departments that they feel that they have not been listened to or considered equally?
I just want to make sure for the public housing department that if we're going along with like rules and regulations or prevention, that we are considered like a public site. So it can't just be like for communal areas in the community. It also needs to be taken care of and addressed in the public housing. So like getting the green infrastructure needs to also be in public housing, and making sure that we're leaving fees and charges out of public housing because it's still considered, public area. That's all for me.
Trying to figure out the most simple way of getting this written down. God, let me see here. All right, what I'm trying to do is just share screen. One is, hold on. I'll try to pull up our. There we go, a written debrief. All righty. So here's going to be our finalized agreement. And I'm not exactly sure if there's a specific length or anything like that, just to make sure that everybody's contributions and everybody's agreements on what was expressed is put in there. So someone want to kind of help guide my writing in this, or where to start?
I think we can start off by kind of just explaining how we want a combination of B, D, and E to kind of, I don't know, just to begin with, that we wanted a combination of those three strategies. And then maybe each individual or each kind of specialist here can talk popcorn style about the specific topics that they want addressed, if that works for everyone.
That works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we said B, D, and E. Is that correct?
Sounds like it.
Okay.
Basically.
I think B was
I
actually
think it's
preparedness.
emergency preparedness.
BDE.
Oh, copy.
B, yeah.
Not
Oh,
Uh-oh.
whoops! I put A. B.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I will type it out.
I'm so bad at multitasking. That's for sure.
Great. You're good.
Yeah. So let's start off with. Oh. Um, oops. I'm not sure how how specific in examples I really want this. I'm not going to get into details as to what type of education for the public.
I'm guessing because it's just 10 minutes, it's pretty much basically what you kind of listed off with your notes. Maybe I don't think it needs to be like super in depth. Sorry, we can't help much.
Oh no, that's fine. You came up with these ideas. Uh, oh. What are the rules and regulations for new building construction?
Like green infrastructure,
Oh yeah.
green roofs, or cool roof. I'm not really sure which one to use.
I think we also mentioned like regulations for like air quality, indoor air quality.
And also electric cars.
We are putting that in here. That we're gonna put it as how are we putting electric cars in here? Is it incentive or like California, like in 20 years, you can't have fuel or you can't have gas stuff.
I think Yifan mentioned like decreasing taxes on electric cars.
Incentives, yeah. All right. All right, so this is for buildings. All right. Not really a regulation. Just purchases. What was E? All right, prevention. Uh, this. Negate the potential. Oh, where'd it go? Oh, there it is. Yeah. Didn't think of anything else on that. All right. Again, I don't know how
Did we say
detailed this-
that for the, I'm saying that, did we mention, so if we want to do the prevention strategy, it's like, we need to raise funds from the public and something like that.
reach out to them as in like get their investment into it or education.
So for the last paragraph, so I think Brianna mentioned something like to set the collaboration between the public and the private companies
Oh,
so
yes.
that we have
yeah.
more fund resources.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think having that partnership would be important, especially if we want to reduce our financial burden that we're putting on people.
Yeah.
Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay, Also, I think we also want to add like a part for increased green spaces and things like that in the city or.
Yeah, rules and regulations, I mentioned it, but I didn't really go into detail. I did like rooftop gardens for buildings, but yeah, green spaces would be more, that would be, yeah, prevention probably. Like parks, trees and such. Basically more vegetation and dirt as opposed to concrete. So that heavy storm waters can soak into the ground and not just flood out into concrete.
Do you want to use the term now at the end of this sentence? Or maybe we want to implement it gradually?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, what I was thinking was like getting things started now for the longer term future, but yeah, you can just take it out. Just say to begin implementation. Period.
Okay.
All right. Let's see where else is required. All right. Well, I'm sure I've missed plenty of things. But I think we got to the heart of the issue, which was just expressing our own wants and desires and needs to benefit our agencies, conceptualize them in a way as to pros and cons and expensive and not expensive and in the short term and long term, and came up with a pretty good compromise and consensus as to what we feel the town needs should address first, and that's realistic and reasonable. I mean, otherwise you just say everything, just do everything. It's not very realistic though and reasonable. So I think what we're suggesting to the council is something that can be done, and there are some specific steps that they can begin now, so that at the next storm, the next catastrophic incident from heavy rain or heat, they'll be better prepared to respond to it, and then long term they'll be able to help prevent some of these issues. I think the whole heat thing is really one of the more difficult things. Is you can't prevent heat except for like we've mentioned, green rooftops to help the sunlight. You could paint rooftops white too to reflect the sun. More green spaces, so there's less concrete, so it doesn't absorb the heat like that. But what I think, there's very little things that can be done. I think maybe more water parks. I'm not exactly sure that'd be a good idea, but something for people to do. I'm sure in a population of 100K, they've got resources like that already. But making sure that every building has AC, air conditioning, the nursing facilities, long-term care facilities, all those kinds of places. But that's something that I think we don't need to necessarily get into right now. That would be more long-term prevention as well, or medium term. So then see the rest of the questions. So in the first question, what was the outcome? I mean, we don't need to necessarily restate the whole final agreement. So
Yeah,
I think that's it. Is
Yeah.
the final
See
outcome
us.
is yeah, we came up with an answer. Nobody yelled at anybody. Nobody said anybody's ideas were stupid. Like, what do you think we are? California? Yeah, what else? What was the name? So, let's
Good
see.
idea.
Was one met? Yes.
Is there any other major concerns that we had? I feel like most of them fell in the first two.
Yeah.
I think also the major concerns for the public housing is about the homeless people and aged, so the marginalized people.
Yeah.
I think we can add that to the health and safety of citizens, just kind of like a added point of like vulnerable population, marginalized populations.
It's true.
Yeah, I think they can all be merged into the second one.
Yes.
I think just doing popcorn style on some of these questions will work. Wasn't the plan, but I think it works fine.
Works.
Just, I guess at the end before we're all done, it's we got 90 minutes right now. It's been an hour and a half. Is that I guess every one of us can go through and make sure that if the question is related to our thing, that we like the answer or agree with it, or if we want to change it. I think we technically have up until 2 hours to get this done, but we don't need to go that far. I think we're almost done.
I think for number 6, we could talk about a big trade was budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, getting what we want out of, like, everyone getting what they want is gonna have to cause an increase in the budget.
Yes.
Do you want me to type that?
Okay.
And I think it, in addition to the budget, is timeliness of the actual thing that we wanted. Some of them were more immediate, and addressing the symptoms, like emergency response and preparedness, and some were much more long-term preventative measures, and that we kind of put those together, and I don't know, took the best of both. Oh, this is going to be so much fun for Professor Sharp and Sherry to watch.
I don't know how they're gonna watch so many.
I know. Um, I don't really want to.
Brianne, when you were stating that your son with the air quality, is that a real life viewpoint?
No,
Or
that was
was
just
he made
something that was mentioned like
Ah,
multiple
I was
times.
trying to think. I was like, which one was a real live viewpoint? Do
Yeah.
with it. And that's why I was like, I can use her son, but
That means you played your role really well, Brianne.
I know that's why I was like, did she have?
I'm glad I can convince you I have a son because I have no kids.
I was like, oh.
I think number 8, I'm not exactly happy with my answer, the first part, but the second part of that question is for each of us, really. I think if we all lived in the same place like Denver, it would be easy to answer, but I'm pretty sure we don't. Or maybe, I don't know. I live out in super rural frontier.
Which question are you talking about?
8 is asking, do these, so like what were the major public health concerns highlighted by this game? And do these reflect the reality in the actual communities that are represented by each of us?
No.
Yeah, I mean,
Mm.
we have flooding here, but not in town. It's more in the canyon, but that's, geographic. That's because it's a canyon and there's nowhere for the water to go. And we got rock slides every time. And then we got fires. So the fires take out the vegetation. And then when it rains heavy, then we get these massive slides taking the roads out. But that's not really what Mapleton is concerned of.
I mean, like with
Mm-mm.
Lions that happened a few years ago, that might be a good example of flooding happening because that took out the whole entire Mapleton, or not Mapleton, took out all of Lions.
And no heat, but every time I see the temperatures in Denver, it's like, holy cow. So maybe it is getting hot over there. Here, I live at 9,000 feet, and I think 90 degrees is one of our records. We're never going to get to 100, at least in my lifetime. But
I think we could also mention like as like general public health concerns, we're all concerned about like our city's safety, like, and that's in real life too. And then we're also concerned about like the health and illness of our citizens and how possible climate changes will impact that, just like in general.
I like that.
yeah, like one of the examples in the story to this was the flooding and increased mold.
How did each of you think about climate change?
Number 9 looks fun.
I don't know if it's just me, but I kind of feel a little bit more, I guess, dejected and like I feel a little more hopeless after the kind of simulation just because there's so many attributes and things that and factors that have to go into pursuing real change for climate change that we already know how controversial climate change is, right? And like getting everyone to agree on something is just so difficult that I mean, I feel like really sad. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, and I think there's just, when you say, we kind of see climate change, not everybody else out there, and I kind of see us, well, not me, but in the future of being in public health and other areas as really hopeful. But I just see so much division and so much, like if we tried to do something like this here in Custer County, oh my gosh, it would be, nobody would agree on anything because it's all, that doesn't exist. So, sometimes it's difficult. I work in substance abuse, and so when I work with commissioners, it's super easy and no problems. But um, most 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 people, at least in leadership here, do not think the climate is changing, at least in terms of because of us, and that there's ways that we can reduce it, which is strange, but
I have a question. So for questions from maybe from number 10 to number 13, it seems to ask each of us our individual opinions. Or do we write
Oh.
for each of us, or?
it looks like it. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't read that one ahead.
Does anyone have anything else they want to add to question 9? Did anyone else's viewpoint kind of change? Or can we all agree that climate change is happening and real, and we need to be prepared more as a community to address it?
I agree with that.
For number 12, I'm trying to think of what do you think would encourage members of the community to become involved addressing public health risks associated with climate change? I was thinking like some incentives, like being able to see what, like if these things were that we're planning to implement, if they're able to actually see what our plan is rather than just hoping that it's a good one. Or is it just in general, not specific to our simulation?
I think we could add in the idea, like what we use, like lowering taxes for like having like green infrastructure, using solar panels, think like having smart cars, or not smart cars, but electric and based vehicles. So I think that could be some good incentives we could mention.
I think maybe like implementation of like physical activity programs in order to reduce like use of motor vehicles if possible. I think like maybe creation of like running groups or walking groups, things like that, to kind of get people to engage in physical activity more than motor vehicle usage.
Another thing could even be like cleaning up bike paths, or like creating bike paths. Yeah, I mean, that's okay.
I think like using that in tandem with programs, like you could make like a bike club or something.
Or also like to encouraging public transportation. That's always good.
I wonder if like part of our final agreement, we should have added like maybe legislation on fixing up public transportation. Because I know a lot of people don't use public transportation because maybe like sanitation reasons, or it's you don't know how to access public transportation. So maybe like increasing maps to get to your nearest bus stop, or like cleanup teams, like clean up like the outside of like RTD stations.
I like that. I also think we could talk about like safety. Some people are concerned for their safety on public transportation, so do something around that too.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Goodness, glad we set aside more time than 10 minutes like the agenda recommends. We're coming up hour 47 now. Alrighty. Where do actually all of you live?
I live in Shiprock, New Mexico, so near the Four Corners.
Nice. What was it called again? Oh, Shiprock.
Shiprock?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah. I used to work in Mancos, up in Colorado, but or
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Yeah. Mancos or Mancos or something. Yeah.
I live in Aurora, right next to CU Anschutz.
I also live in Aurora. More of like the Denver, Aurora area.
I live in Denver.
Well, I just moved to Aurora like a month ago, but I will talk about my previous communities in general because I'm not really familiar with where I live right now.
I'm from Greeley, Colorado, so northern Colorado.
I guess Custer is kind of south central. It's kind of down there, but it's West Cliff and Silver Cliff. We only got 5,000 people in the entire county, but then I got the Crestone Peak to my left or to the west, and I'm up in the wet mountains. A lot of us, I mean, all of us, my entire area down here, we all have 35 acres and everyone's off grid. And then the town itself, I think there's about 2,000 people maybe in both Silver Cliff and West Cliff combined. Everyone else is spread out. It's a huge ranching agriculture. I think we produce the most hay in the entire state. We got more cows than people. We feel good on the first several questions until it gets to our individual ones, like 1 through 9.
Looks good to me. If anyone has anything to like add, I feel like you can just add it on.
I would agree.
Alrighty. All right. So I mean, I'm not sure if I should just end the recording before 2 hours, or we could just keep on typing since it's an open thing, but I think it kind of referenced, suggested a little bit that, everything that gets submitted pretty much is done, cut off once the recording is done, that like we can't, or that we shouldn't go back and add more answers after the recording stops. So I guess let's just wrap it up. And I'm not exactly sure I even started my stopwatch at exactly the moment I pressed record. So actually I might be off a few minutes, and it could actually be closer to 2 hours exactly. It's an hour 56. Again, I don't know if it was a suggestion or a requirement, but I read a lot and I don't remember a lot. Does everybody else feel pretty good so far about what we did?
Yes, for sure.
I think we did. I think we did
Most
good.
definitely.
Yeah.
Everybody did good.
I mean, in reality, something like this would take,
Good job.
I mean, days and days and days of
Right.
back and
More than
forth.
2
And
hours.
yeah, I mean, just to throw something together. I mean, and our whole negotiating was done in probably an hour, plus everything else. But yeah, I mean, this would be something in reality would take, you wouldn't come up with an answer for months. It would be like a whole
Imagine the
year.
possibilities.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we did good. I think we saved Mapleton in their future. Let's see. All right. So here's what I'll do is if I hit end recording, I'll get this up on YouTube thing and then post that and let everybody know. And then same thing with this shared doc. I think those are the only two things that need to be submitted within 48, and I'll just get it done tonight.
Perfect. Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah, no problem.
All your
Thank you
Patrick.
so much.
And then I
You
can
were
get
a great
started.
facilitator.
I did a
Thank
great
you.
job.
Thank you
I
so
don't know. I think I'm terrible at it, but
No, you're great at it.
I could have definitely been
Oh,
more
great.
prepared. Stuff.
So are you submitting it like as one thing, or are we all submitting it separately as well?
Just me.
It said the facilitator needed to submit both.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought, just making sure.
Yeah. And I got to do some special thing with YouTube because it's over 15 minutes long. So I'll figure it out. I got instructions.
Perfect.
Good job,
Right.
everybody. I feel like everybody did really, really, really well.
Great. Yeah. Thank you all. And maybe I'll see some of you in the IPE. Yeah, I think that's what IPE. Yeah. Who knows? All right. Well, you can at least hit end for the professor's sake. No, wait. Oops. Hold on. That's end meeting, not end. Hold on. I need to end recording, not end meeting.